Hello, everyone. This is David Brown. I'm coming to you from our Facebook Live. This is my own home. Coming to you this way because obviously we have very trying and difficult times right now, and we decided it would be much better to do this than to lose contact. So that's what we're doing tonight. So I do want to take you through. Let me see here if I can share my screen. Welcome, everybody. Oh no, I can't share my screen. Well, my plans are potentially ruined. Let me see what I can do with this real quick. Thank you for the hearts. I appreciate that. All right. Well, apparently my plan to have share my slides is not going to work out. So I'm going to have to wing it because that's what we do. So the most important thing to share with you, start off the bat, something I started during the last congressional run. Whenever I would have a meeting with the people in my my staff, would be a pledge. And in that pledge, I'm going to read off a kind of cue cards here. In that pledge, I, as a candidate, would pledge integrity and honesty in all things, to not be a candidate that you would be associated to be with, to not sell out our ideals for money, to raise up voices of others, especially the often unheard, and to build a safe environment for all. And lastly, to fight. What we ask of our volunteers is integrity and honesty, to reflect well on the campaign in words and deeds, to respect others, and to seek out those who you think are not being heard and make sure we hear their voices. These are the things I offer for the folks on my campaign, to have them clearly understand where I stand, and the things I ask for those who participate in my campaign. We talk about these pledges every time we meet. And I think it's important for you as the public to understand who I plan to be as a representative, that it's really important. So going forward, wanted to make sure that that everyone has help with the coronavirus. One of the things I want to make sure everyone does to please keep yourselves and your family safe, to minimize contact with others, to wash your hands thoroughly with soap and water. It is our best defense. And to follow recommendations, including eliminating gatherings of over 10. The governor has asked that recently, and I really applaud his efforts in that regard. We want to help protect our frontline workers, especially doctors, nurses, first responders, and grocery store workers. I know that sounds odd, but actually just today, the Minnesota state has declared grocery store workers as emergency workers in order to help them get the kind of free child care that emergency workers should get during these crises. Because while we're all largely contained, we would be in real trouble if we didn't have our grocery store workers. So I really appreciate all that effort. I also would recommend, if at all possible, to while keeping yourself and your family safe, to help reach out to others to see if they might need help, but also to make sure that you're reaching out if you yourself need help. The only way we're going to get through this is if we make sure we take care of each other. This is a real important aspect of my campaign, and one thing I hope my campaign will model. I do have a list of crisis resources. These are numbers to call. The most important one is North Carolina has an information number that they put in place. You can dial 211 and you can get that information. There's a longer phone number as well, but just remember 211 for information regarding the current situations. You can also contact your county health departments. I've put those numbers on my Facebook feed just earlier today, so make sure you can get them as you need them. So I do want to pause a little bit here and check to see if there's any questions specifically about what we're going through with the coronavirus or COVID-19. Everyone's being friendly. Good. Thank you. I'm glad everyone's friendly. One of the things that's really important for this campaign and for why I do this is because it's about the people. This is not a campaign that's raising a ton of money, that's hiring a huge consulting class. This is a campaign that's run with grassroots volunteers, people who care about what the future of this district is. And that's one of the reasons I do this. I do this because I want people to be empowered. This is not about emboldening me or making me some powerful person. One of the things that we see and we hear often from people talking about people in positions of power is the fear of the corruption and the fear of, even if it's not out and out corruption, but if it's doing things that may not be what's best for the district or doing things that just don't look good. A good example of this is today. News has come out that our own Senator Burr has apparently unloaded a lot of stocks just before the big crisis happened and the stock markets took a turn, whereas he had been reassuring people that the virus was not an issue. As the Senate Intelligence Committee chair, he apparently in a private function was telling donors that it was largely problematic, and then did this. Now, the SEC rules are very complex. We can't jump to the conclusion that what he did was illegal, but it is interesting to note that he is the only seated member of Congress who voted against the 2012 Stock Act. So take that what it may. I hope as more comes to light, we understand better what our North Carolina senator has done, and he has explanations, or that he chooses the right path and resigns if the case is what it's looking to be. So beyond that, one of the big things that I talk about in my campaign as a progressive is how we can get back to restoring certain rights that were never quite enumerated because there was always an assumption that we would have. When this nation was founded, we were founded on the principles of protecting life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. During World War II, FDR, one of our greatest presidents, in the midst of this great war, recognized the need to learn from the mistakes that were made during the Great Depression and to prepare for a stronger economic stability for America. In January of 1944, he proposed what is called the Second Bill of Rights. The intent being is to put out a list of rights that would support people in America to make sure that we had economic stability coming out of that war. And if you don't mind, I'm going to look away from the screen so I can read this information to you, because usually when I'm at events, it's not very easy for me to actually read this in a context. But I'm going to take the time now, so I hope you'll bear with me. FDR said, "It is our duty now to begin to lay the plans and determine the strategy for the winning of a lasting peace and the establishment of an American standard of living higher than ever before known. We cannot be content, no matter how high that general standard of living may be, if some fraction of our people, whether it be 1/3 or 1/5 or 1/10, is ill-fed, ill-clothed, ill-housed, and insecure. This republic had its beginning and grew to its present strength under the protections of certain inalienable political rights. Among them, the right of free speech, free press, free worship, trial by jury, freedom from unreasonable searches and seizures. They were our rights to life and liberty. As our nation has grown in size and stature, however, as our industrial economy expanded, these political rights proved inadequate to assure us equality in the pursuit of happiness. We have come to a clear realization of the fact that true individual freedom cannot exist without economic security and independence. Necessitous men are not free men. That is his quote. People who are hungry and out of a job are the stuff of which dictatorships are made. In our day, these economic truths have become accepted as self-evident. We have accepted, so to speak, a second Bill of Rights under which a new basis of security and prosperity can be established for all, regardless of station, race, or creed. Among these are the rights to a useful and this is a hard word for me to say, remunerative job in the industry or shops or farms or mines of the nation. In other words, something that made you feel good that you were being useful and delivering for our society. The right to earn enough to provide adequate food and clothing and recreation. The right of every farmer to raise and sell his products at a return which will give him and his family a decent living. The right of every businessman, large and small, to trade in an atmosphere of freedom from unfair competition and domination by monopolies at home or abroad. The right of every family to a decent home. The right to adequate medical care and the opportunity to achieve and enjoy good health. The right to adequate protection from the economic fears of old age, sickness, accident, and unemployment. And the right to a good education. All of these rights spell security. And after this war is won, we must be prepared to move forward in the implementation of these rights to new goals of human happiness and well-being. America's own rightful place in the world depends in large part upon how fully these and similar rights have been carried into practice for all our citizens. For unless there is security here at home, there cannot be lasting peace in the world. Now, this was said in January 11th, 1944, 76 years ago. What we fight for as progressives is not radical. Our grandparents fought for these things. Our parents fought for these things. These are the things that make America great. If we can deliver to the people of this nation stability, economic stability, no matter race, creed, or religion, that's the same thing. But if we can deliver on these things, then the just society that we will have will provide for the people, will provide stability for America, will provide a better future for our children and grandchildren. These are the things we must strive for. Now, I would add a few things to that now. Certainly, recognition of the need to protect our environment is great. Again, we went through a period where some of these things were assumed to be the duty of a government to protect the environment that its citizens lived in. Greed is always in the way of delivering to the people the things that make their lives better, that make the pursuit of happiness possible for all and not just a few. These are the things that I strive for in my campaign to fight and deliver. If I get to Washington and I'm your voice, these are the things that will be my highest priorities, the things that I will fight for again and again. So I want you with me to imagine a different today. How would your life look if we fulfilled FDR's vision to deliver these rights of economic stability? If what we're going through, especially now in the coronavirus, if people didn't have to worry about providing for their own health care, if we had sufficient housing that made sure everyone had the housing that they needed, if education was the top notch that it needs to be in order for America to continue to be great, to continue to be the leaders of the world, if we want to achieve those, we can't continue to deny the basic needs of the people of America while making sure that those in the enriched positions of leaders of industry continue to get so much more, that the wealth equality is so uneven in this nation. We can't have it be that way. Because as Roosevelt said, those are the stuff that breed dictatorships. You could easily argue that the greed that we see coming from the other party and from leaders of industry, no matter what party, if they continue to do the things that they do and continue to take too much from our society without giving back what is fairly owed, then we are going to quickly be in a position where someone like Trump grows to power. We have to make sure that the people know that the politicians going to Washington, the politicians going to Raleigh, the politicians in your own county and city, that those people put the people they're serving above all else. When we have that doubt in the leaders, then it breeds someone who can come along and blame someone else for the misfortunes or the struggles that people go through. It was too easy for someone like Donald Trump to come in and say, it's not your fault that you're struggling. It's these other people. We've seen it throughout history. We have to learn from our history. In Nazi Germany, we know who Hitler said was the people that were at fault for Germany's upheaval. And we know how that turned out. We cannot allow that kind of fascism, that kind of authoritarian dictatorship where people are driving the people of the country against one another in a means to make their ends. That's what's going on. So we have to fight to make sure that the people of America know that we have their backs as politicians. We have to be more transparent. We'll get to that in a minute. But I want to talk about what I consider my priorities running this campaign and my intended role as your representative. Number one, I will provide health care for all Americans via some form of single-payer health care. It's the bottom line. We have to do it. We cannot afford as a nation not to do it. If any of you have been to some of my events recently, you may have heard me say this, but the Koch brothers, who are very much against big government, they contracted for a group to do a study about how much Medicare for all would cost this nation. And they came up with this terrible, frightening number of $39 trillion over a decade. That sounds terrible. I mean, how can we possibly do that? We're already $23 trillion in debt. But what was great about that report was it was never compared to what it would actually cost us if we continue down the road we're on for that same decade. That total is estimated to be $53 trillion. So their own study proved that it would actually be more cost efficient for everyone in our nation to be covered by Medicare for all than it would be to continue down the path that we're doing on. We're paying for people who are uncovered by insurance by how high the cost of healthcare is. We're paying a $58 billion a year middleman industry of private insurance year after year to keep us from our own health care. It makes sense to do the things that we do. Now, we as a nation recognize many things that are better done when we do it as the government. Our roads and bridges are handled by the government. Now, they're getting behind, and there's a solution for that as well. But when they brought out the Eisenhower Highway Program, that was done through the government in order to provide for the people. those things are things that make sense. Our military, we pay for military. If you want to look at the most socialist thing in America, it's how our military is provided for. We have to absolutely make sure to deliver for America the things that make sense, because we collectively can do better together in core things. And I truly, truly believe healthcare is one of those things. Now, I also want to require that all companies pay their workers a living wage, no matter what work they do. Now, why is that important? One of the things I hear a lot from the other side is the frustration that they feel that their tax dollars go to fund other people in their lives. The problem is we get in a situation very quickly where people cannot afford to do a 40-hour-a-week job and still cover the needs of their family. That's ridiculous. How can we consider ourselves a strong society if we're not making sure that the least of us is still able to cover a good living, food, clothing, shelter, even decent recreation? I mean, pursuit of happiness is what this is about. If we're not fighting to make sure that everyone has a small sliver of happiness in their lives, then we're not doing the right things. So these are the things that are important to me. I want to also make sure that we deliver the highest quality public education with teachers truly paid what they deserve. We are not going to continue to be the leader of this global economy if we don't make sure that our students are being provided the best possible education. Our teachers are core foundational people to our very nation, our society. We have to make sure that we provide for them. One of the programs that I'm looking into and would pursue when I go to Congress is the idea of making all public school teachers tax exempt positions, federally tax exempt. Now, the reason for this is how foundational teachers are to our nation. Now, I've heard people come back at me, well, what about nurses? What about doctors? What about lawyers? So on and so forth. Well, nobody says lawyers. But the point being is it's foundational to our nation to have teachers. Not a single one of those other jobs I've mentioned, engineers, astronauts, whatever, is where they're at and capable of doing the jobs that we need them to do if they haven't been touched by multiple teachers in their lives. We have to make sure that we totally transform how we treat and pay our teachers. And this, I think, will be a key way that as a federal government, since the states currently control how the schools are run, it is a way the federal government to make sure that every school teacher is paid the rate they should be deserving. And we should also make sure that states aren't able to deduct how much they're earning based on this exemption. So also, I want to make sure that we protect our global environment from as one of the top mandates of federal government. We need to make sure that we can continue to maintain this planet that we live on. We have to make sure that we as a government, we're the sole entity that's there to protect against greed, rampant greed, just strip mining our planet for the now, for riches now. That's one thing that we are constantly fighting against. And we as a nation, as a government, have to pull our resources to make sure that we cover and take care of our environment, or else this is all for naught. This is the reason that we're here, and that's a key thing that we have to make sure to do. I know several people are big fans of the Green New Deal. I think it's pretty nebulous from what I've seen of it. I would support it if I had more details. We need to make sure that what we're doing makes sense and provides good jobs for people, and make sure that are doing the right things and doesn't quickly become some corporate boondoggle. We need to do these things. One of the things I have proposed in the past to not only bridge the gap for employment losses, and I think we're going to see some heavy employment losses, I hate to say it, in this current crisis we're going through, but I would like to see a modern WPA program where we as a government put people directly to work for our nation, doing the things that there is no easy profit motive in, fixing our infrastructure, our roads and our bridges. All the time we talk about these private companies that are contracted to do the work on our infrastructure. We badly need it nationwide, and especially in our rural areas. The profit motive is not there, and sometimes the tax base isn't there to provide to have these things done. Our federal government can step in and make these things happen and help save our rural communities by fixing the infrastructure, including providing rural broadband to those areas, make sure that everyone has access to broadband in this global economy, because if we don't, they're going to continue to slip behind and not be able to compete on the global market. We have to deliver these types of things. But I think those can be combined with new clean energy initiatives to help power especially rural municipalities. Because if your tax dollars aren't going to pay for the power that your town, your police, your fire departments need to use, then you have more spending power within your community to do more and to innovate. And those are things I'd like to see happen. And I think the federal government can have a role in stepping in. And those are jobs that are not going to be easily replaced by automation. I haven't talked about it, which is unusual for these talks of mine. But one of the things that we struggle with is loss of jobs. Now, we look at unemployment figures and they look pretty good. But we know that the unemployment figures are kind of hollow, because if people aren't being paid a living wage, they may be employed, but they may be underemployed by what they need to provide for home. We know that it's not immigration that's the job killer in this nation. It's automation. We're losing jobs in manufacturing and in all sectors of our economy to automation and AI. And this can be a good thing, but at the same time, we're going to lose a lot of jobs. The predictions are that by 2030, our nation will lose 73 million jobs to automation. That's staggering. That will be very impactful. So we need to prepare for the future. Education is a major piece of that, and not just K through 12 education, not just college education, technical education, including job retraining where needed for people whose whole sectors of economy could be going away. On top of that, the WPA program that I propose is another gap, because as I said, those are jobs that automation won't easily replace in the near future. So that's my plan for bringing jobs to NC5, and certainly want to make sure that that's something that when I go to Washington, I work very hard to deliver for our district. And then lastly, and especially in light of what I talked about earlier with Senator Burr and what we see from a large swath of the Trump administration, is I want to greatly increase congressional oversight into government corruption, and I want to pass laws to increase minimum penalties for those violations. We really need to restructure and to protect our government against the kind of corruption we're seeing. What we've seen is that we've relied too long on good intentions and on the norms. And when you have someone in power like President Trump, who doesn't care about those norms and doesn't feel beholden to those because he didn't come up through government, he didn't understand the requirements, he looks at it in a business context, which has always been echoed by the right as a way to better do government, but it's very clearly not the way to do government. In business, in many instances, greed is a driving force. Deliverable to your shareholders is the driving force, oftentimes at the expense of the consumers. We are the consumers of the services of our government. We deserve better. We need to get the real value that our tax dollars should be giving us. These are what I'm fighting for, and these are these priorities I'm talking about. I'm just talking about making sure that we get out of our government what we deserve from the taxes we pay in. All right, I've been talking a lot, but I do want to say one last thing before we open it up to any questions that we have. I want to be a new kind of representative, and I'm not bashing any specific sitting members of Congress. But back in the mid 90s, I hate to admit how old I am, but in the mid 90s, I had the opportunity to actually intern on Capitol Hill and in Washington for a member of Congress. In seeing how that operates and seeing how that whole method of federal government operates, and specifically our legislature, I have come up with some ideas of things that I would like to put in place if I'm ever or when I'm elected to Congress to represent you. I want to bring a better transparency to your representative. Many of us think about our representatives very distantly, and some in our district don't even know who your representative is or who it will be, especially with this district change. So I want to be the kind of representative that is transparent and accessible, and isn't just beholden to those who vote for me. I want to be accessible even to those who didn't vote for me. You talk about things like town halls, and even those representatives who do them, they're very controlled environments. They're very limited. Oftentimes they're in the middle of a work day, limiting who can actually go to them. They're oftentimes held at insufficiently attendable halls. They're small places. We need to make sure that we have representatives who are accessible to the voters and be able to face the voters no matter what. If I don't feel like I'm up there doing my job and I'm willing to face voters and talk about every vote that I've made and be able to defend every vote that I've made, then I'm not a representative of the people. I'm a representative of my own values, and that's not what I want to be. Yes, I go to the job with my own values. Yes, I'm laying them out for you to understand and see. But when I get there, I have to listen to you. I have to hear the feedback from you. Now, that's only going to work if you're well informed. So one of the things I want to do is have a weekly address, kind of like this, where I will tell you very specific things. I'm going to tell you what happened the prior week in Congress in terms that you understand, and explain to you what my votes were. I also want to talk to you about what's coming up in the coming week. I want you aware of what's coming up so you have a chance to share your voice to me while it's going on, while it's happening, and not be reactionary. So I can be as well informed as possible of what the opinion of my constituents is. And then lastly, I want to make sure you understand what I feel are the hindrances to delivering for you the best that I can for this district. That when I'm making those votes and I fear that the vote may not go in the direction that benefits our district, I want you to know why. It might be my own party's leadership. It might be a lobby group or an interest group that is standing in the way of us delivering the best for our district. These are things I want you to know. I also want you to know that when I'm up in Washington, I'm doing the people's business. I'm doing the business of the people of this district. Now, what does that mean? That means that when I go there, I'm going to put some rules in place, including if any interest group, lobby group, whomever wants to speak and come to speak specifically with me in my office, then they need to convince at least one of my constituents to join them in that meeting. Now, why do I say that? Because I want to make sure that there's at least somebody in that room that I'm representing, that they have an eye and an ear to hear what's being said, and that I'm putting the interest of the people first. Now, I also want to make sure that for those who can't go to Washington on a regular basis, that you know who I'm meeting with. So I'm going to make sure that my office visitor logs are posted online. I want you to know who I'm meeting with on a regular basis. It's very simple. Technology is certainly capable of delivering all the things I've just mentioned to you. And why shouldn't we have that level of transparency with our members of Congress? Why shouldn't you have the faith and belief that the person up there is doing what he or she believes is the best thing for our district, and making the case to you on a weekly basis, not hiding up in an office in Washington and maybe coming down to the district for photo opportunities or town halls on infrequent basis. No, I want you to know very regularly what I'm doing for you. So these are things that I want to be put in place to make sure that you have no doubt that I am someone who is actively thinking and working for the people of our district. So that being said, let's see. One other thing. You may have seen some of my slogans. My campaign slogan is a better road forward. And I hope that some of the things I've talked about, my priorities and those progressive values, those economic stability points, my focus on the future and delivering for the people of this district and being a transparent representative. These are all encompassed in that phrase, a better road forward. But you have to understand, to be a grassroots candidate, to be someone who fights for the people, I need your help. I need you to be part of that change. That's why I'm asking you to put your time and effort and maybe even money where your mouth is and help me make that change. I want you to be part of my campaign. This is an invitation to whomever is out there who's interested in what I have to say, who's interested in the fight to bring a progressive voice to this district, that I can't do it without you. I wish that I was someone who could stand up here and say, I got this, but I need you to be part of this in order for me to be successful. We know that this district has not been stacked in our favor, but it doesn't mean it's unwinnable. We can have the will of the people if the message that I'm talking about, if you help me get that word out, when you talk to your friends and family, when you share some of the stuff that I post on social media and get people to talk about it, that makes a huge difference for getting the word out. When you volunteer and spend time, whether it's making phone calls or canvassing when we're able to again, those are important things that we can do. One thing I'm looking at for my campaign right here and now is, how can we go ahead and start serving this district in this time, in this crisis with this virus and people having to stay at home as much as possible? We need to actively be checking in on those folks who can't get out actively. We need to make sure that those people are taken care of. That's what I'm going to be spending my time in the very near future doing, is calling and checking on these folks and helping connect them to services that make a difference in their lives, to make sure no one is left behind in this period that we're going through, this crisis. So I want your help. I want your help in doing this. I want to help serve the people of our district, because I truly believe if we can prove that we are people who are dedicated to serve the people of this district, no matter what party they may have on their voter registration, then we can turn minds. We can change the opinions of people, because we know the propaganda that they're fed. We know what they're told on a frequent basis, multiple times a day. We are demonized a lot in this area. I've been called a Democrat. I've been called a Democrat. I don't know. There's all sorts of stuff. And it's ridiculous, because when you look at it, when you look at the morals of the platform of this party, we have the moral high ground. But we have to get that word across. We have to make sure people understand how hard we would fight to make sure that they have the best life possible, not ourselves. That is the message that I would want to say, and have you help me tell them. They may not believe it. They may think that we're just telling them what we want to get into office, to get into power, to make money. But, especially in light of what Senator Burr's talked about today, I'm very serious that if I get elected to Congress, I want to look at a way to truly put my personal assets into a blind trust, to make sure that I'm not benefited from this office, that I have a stable growth, but it's not something that's reflective of things that I know because of being in Congress, or deals that I make that make myself better. Why would someone go to Congress to do that? There's business you can pursue that can help you make money if that's what you're driving to do. I'm not going to Washington to do that. I want to go to Washington to serve the people of this district, to bring a better road forward and a better tomorrow for all of the people of this district. And that's what I'm fighting for. So I've talked a lot. And it looks like I didn't realize that this was scrolling. So I'm going to have to scroll down and see. Hi, folks. There's a lot of highs. You're welcome for addressing the Burr situation. Yes, hold on. I'm going to break out my reading glasses. Don't make fun of me. We could save $450 million a year going to single payer. Right on. Mark, thank you very much. Let's see. Tax exempt. Okay, we have some pluses there. Yes, oil jobs are going away. We see as a good paying job possibilities for rural county that dependent on the furniture industry that is now gone. Great question, Pam. My dad was in the furniture industry. In fact, he retired just before a lot of those jobs left. We have a manufacturing, economy. That's what, between the textiles and furniture and some of the other things that were done here in North Carolina that we could replace, because there's a lot of needs in that clean energy environment that we could pursue. We could have, I think North Carolina, is the second biggest state for doing solar. We could expand that greatly. We could do and develop those things. I also think, as a tech person myself, that we have a real opportunity to be the Silicon Valley of the East. We already have a significant component in the Research Triangle Park area of North Carolina, but I think that we have a real opportunity to have a tech corridor right here in North Carolina, in the 5th District, in the Western North Carolina, I meant to say, because of how much land we have available, how low the cost of living is. These are things that we easily could do if we deliver broadband. If we cannot deliver broadband to these areas, then it's a losing fight to do that. But that's something I would certainly pursue. I think coming out of a lot of the things that we see in this trade war with China, we're going to have to seriously look at developing the types of technologies and the types of electronics that we have relied too heavily on China to develop for us and to produce for us to do here in America. And I hope that might be a place that we in Western North Carolina can really play in. So thank you for that. Let's see. An independent accountability office to report to the Supreme Court sounds really strong. I like that very much. Thank you for the talking about transparency. Yes, more than half of Burke County is without high-speed internet. So where would the money come from? I definitely think we need to do, if you talk about the Green New Deal, I think that can be part of that. Putting people to work, especially if unemployment grows significantly coming out of this crisis we're going through. I think putting people to work doing these things has to come. The problem and why you have rural counties struggle to get good broadband access is the profit motive. Many corporations don't see that there's going to be enough income coming from that growth in the broadband to put the resources there. They'd rather put it in a place like Charlotte where they could get a bigger bang for their buck. So the government has to step in. We did that with the telephone lines. We as a nation had a significant impact in making that work. So we can do that now. We have to do that now. And I think that's the way to do it. Do a WPA style program, because what's going to happen is the tax values are going to increase in those areas. And that's going to benefit our tax base. Many things, when you are using the federal government or using tax dollars to make an investment, you have to do it wisely in a way that foresees a growth, a payback. And the way to do that is making sure people have good paying jobs. That is something that I think that we can develop and make a good case for. And we have to develop and support. And it's been done at micro levels, right? I mean, there are startups that do support broadband in some smaller rural communities, but they oftentimes don't get the kind of grant money that even big corporations who probably don't need that grant money get when providing services in these towns. So that would be how I would approach that. And yes, many of the tech companies could benefit by that, because they'll certainly see more impact on that. Yeah, they will absolutely benefit from 5G. So if we make sure that the federal government invests in the future tech and not the older stuff, then it certainly benefits us all over after that. So are there any other questions that you have? I've tried to answer some of what's been in the feed. Are there any other thoughts or concerns that you have for the 5th District? But you can also ask questions about me. I'm a very open person. I've been doing this for going on 3 years now, running for federal office and running to be a servant to the people of Western North Carolina. I want you to feel comfortable with me. If you're going to give your vote to me, if you're going to give time or money to help support my campaign, I want you to feel comfortable with me. So again, I will be transparent up to a point. Now, certainly, I don't like to discuss my family in too much detail, because I want to make sure to protect their online anonymity and also, safety. But other than that, we're pretty open about what we do as a family to help do this. And my wife is a powerful and an important person to this campaign. She is our field director. She made a huge impact in my last election in Gaston County. And, without her, especially during my recent heart attack, I wouldn't have been able to get through and be successful in the primary. So I owe her and all of our staff members, and large majority of them are strong Democratic women who are very focused on delivering better tomorrow for their children, their nieces and nephews, their families. Because if we don't do it, if we don't put the effort forward now, then they win. They just win. So we have to give as much as we possibly can, especially knowing the odds are stacked against us, because it's a worthwhile fight to fight for. So I saw some more things come. I'm checking now. What are some of your initiatives to address mental health needs in our community? Fantastic question. Last election, I was actually endorsed by the National Association of Social Workers. It is very critical to me that when we talk about healthcare, moving to Medicare for all, that we greatly expand what kind of coverage is in the mental health world. Mental health is such a key component and has been a taboo subject for so long, and something that has been grossly underfunded. We know a big part, of what's going on in our prison systems are people who do not have adequate mental health access. These are things that we can make a big difference on, and we can make sure that we have better funding for our schools, and make sure, the amount of the amount of social workers per student or counselors per student in our schools is terrifying. I truly believe that we can have a big impact on ending school shootings if we had better access to counselors and social workers, people who, when a teacher or a student raises a red flag or has some concerns, could reach out to that student in a helping way and save them from doing the mistakes and save them from hurting people or themselves. I really think that that would have a big impact on our society. And at that same point, have the ability to destigmatize mental health care and make sure that people have a more holistic approach to their health, and it not just be the physiological health, but also that mental health be a major component of what we consider our wellness. So hopefully that answered your questions. I had some more comments come in. Thank you for the congratulations on winning the primary. What are the things I would do to solve the COVID-19 crisis? Number one, we know that the current administration has dropped the ball significantly in how they've been delivering the federal aid and basically bringing government up to speed. I saw the other day Representative Fox shared something from, I think it was Sonny Perdue, who was bragging about Trump's whole of government approach to solving this crisis. And I literally like pulled my hair out, because that's not what's been happening up until maybe half a week ago. We know that it's been known how bad this is going to be. His own administration has told him how bad this could be. There was just last year a simulation about literally a respiratory disease coming from China and the impacts it could have, and it was significant. And we still act completely unprepared for this. And the news that came out that he actually held back on tests, and it's potentially, and I don't want to get into false information, but it looks like it could have been because he was hoping to have his son-in-law's, the company his son-in-law was involved with, make more money. It's possible that he was doing it just to suppress the numbers to help his reelection campaign. Whatever the case may be, the recognition is now it's almost too late, but we have to spend what we have to spend to get the test and test extensively. We are very quickly going the route of what's gone on in Italy as opposed to what they've done in South Korea. If you look at what they did in South Korea, they did, I think it's 250,000 tests in South Korea, and that helped pull down that curve. We talk about flattening the curve. They did that so aggressively that they were much more able to identify, especially the asymptomatic carriers of the virus, to isolate them and make sure that they didn't spread the virus. The problem right now is we have so few tests being done in this nation that there are probably a significant amount of people who are asymptomatic carriers of this disease or this virus, and we don't know who they're spreading it to right now. That's why we're having to we're probably getting very close to a shelter-in-place scenario, and that may be what America needs for a period of time. But we obviously have to protect our frontline workers, our nurses, our doctors, our as I said, our grocery store workers. We have to make sure that they are provided for and are protected. And the shortage of masks is a terrible thing. We have to approach this as FDR approached World War II. We have to gear up, and we have to put every business and every part of our government that can to make sure that our nation has what we need. And most desperately right now, it's tests and protective gear. We have to make sure that we gear up and get those done as soon as possible, and figure out ways that we can use our states, instead of putting it on our states, get their help to identify where they have the ability to help out. We have to be very proactive in how we to take this next phase. It's too late to be proactive from where we were, but we can be more proactive about this next phase and make sure that we get the tests available to those who need it. All right. Okay. We know people who've lost people to drugs. What plans do we have to fight this problem? Yes. Drug abuse is a problem, and it goes back to what we were talking about mental health. Drug abuse and we really need to look at treatment programs and expanding the capabilities of those treatment programs, as opposed to looking at moving so strongly to criminalizing them. I'm not necessarily saying to decriminalize drugs. What I'm saying is how can we make sure that we treat the addicts and take out the supply? We've spent way too much money on the war on drugs unsuccessfully, and especially when now a big abuse factor is pharmaceutical drugs. So we have to make sure that treatment programs are well funded, are part of our school systems, and we need to make sure that those who need help have the ability to get it regardless of cost. That's the only way to save those lives. When we talk about the lives that could be lost in this spreading virus, or in gun violence, or in all these aspects of things that we as a nation try to address, oftentimes we don't look at those losses of to drug abuse in that same way. And I think that mental health treatment and availability of that, and again, the inclusiveness in the overall wellness of our nation, that has to be a major portion of that. Yes, unfortunately, our administration did cut the CDC budget. They also removed the pandemic response team. We know that it's easy for those in the other party to bash the importance of a strong federal government. But what we're seeing now is when they're in charge and when they run things and they cut indiscriminately, they put our nation at risk. And I certainly think that we need to put all efforts possible forward to making sure that we have plans in place to prevent this from happening again in the future. But in the here and now, we need to gear up in a way that never been seen before, and that may need all of our help. That's one of the reasons why, as I said earlier on, I want to make sure my campaign is reaching out to folks and helping connect them with the resources they need as much as we can. I'm not someone who's in a position of power. I can't call up the CDC or even a state agency and get results, but I'm going to try. But I'm going to use my connections with other people who are in office, whether they be at our state level, some great state representatives that I know, or even the governor, to see what we can do to make sure that, hey, we let them know that there is a need here in North Carolina's 5th Congressional District, and where it is. And we're going to reach out to the county parties. We're going to reach out to the other campaigns running now, because I think that this is our opportunity to prove to the people of North Carolina's 5th District that the Democratic Party, it's a new Democratic Party, and we're here to fight for the people, especially in their time of need. It's easy to go on and plead for someone's vote, to use cultural differences to isolate people and say, I'm your person because I believe the same way you do about these certain things. But in the end, those people aren't there for the day-to-day needs of those voters. And those voters keep voting for them again and again, but they don't understand that these people aren't there fighting for them. They're fighting for some external corporate need. You look at where money comes from. I will not take corporate PAC money. I will not take money from outside of the district, outside of individuals who may be supporting me because they have ties here. I fight for the people of this district. I want you to know that my money comes from individuals who believe passionately that my vision for the future of this district, is the right thing to do. And that's what I will fight for. And that's what I want you to understand. That's what you would be sending to Washington, a person who makes sure and does a check frequently. Am I doing the right thing by the people of this district? And that's another reason I want to do these weekly town halls, these weekly interactions with you once I'm in Washington, to make sure that I'm continuously checking in and understanding what the needs of my people are, what the needs of the district are. So I hope I answered the the questions that have been given to me. Is there anyone else that has specific questions or specific concerns? I'm keeping an eye out. And I'll look to see, maybe Facebook Live isn't the greatest avenue for this. I thought I could share a screen, but apparently I could either share a screen or show me and not do either or. But I'll look and see if there's other technologies that maybe allow us for even more interaction. Please feel free to share information if you have questions. I certainly want to make sure that I deliver for everyone. Let's see, for everyone, the types of answers to your questions. Like something came in. All right. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Cindy Brady. Thank you very much. I do want to say the people that have worked with this campaign, both in the last election cycle and this election cycle, are pretty amazing people. And I really count myself blessed to be working with them and to have their support. I take very personally, as I said early on with my candidate pledge, being someone that you have faith in, that you have integrity in, and it's going to be an earned faith. It's not going to be a blind faith. I want you to know that I'm doing this because I've seen what Washington looks like when it works. I've seen what it looks like when it doesn't work. I'm very frustrated that we as a nation have allowed our recognition of civics and understanding of what our government should be has fallen to the wayside enough to allow someone like President Trump to gain office. Everything he's done since he's been in has been counter to what I have always believed would be the greatness of our nation. If you look at him as an individual, he is everything against what I would try to teach my children to be. How another side, voters who support him don't see that, or how they've gotten so angry to a point that they think that his anger and bigotry are what America should be about is stunning. We know that there's a propaganda on the other side. We know we've got friends and family who oftentimes have been blinded by that propaganda. But we have to fight back, not in fisticuffs or fighting, but in making our voices heard and being together, because the stronger the voice we are together, it's easy in a district that feels, as they call it, a red district or too conservative. It's easy to feel like our voices don't matter, that we're drops in the bucket of this bigger crowd. But that's why I encourage people to be proud to be Democrats, be proud for what the Democratic platform stands for, to understand it and be able to talk intelligently about it, to be able to tell people, I'm fighting for the things that matter to your daily life, not these wedge issues that are brought up again and again to divide us. I want to make sure that when you tuck your kids into bed at night, when you sit down at the dinner table with your friends or family or whomever you dine with, that you know that they're safe, that they're in a nation that's safe, not just in a military sense, but safe in an economic sense and in a justice sense. These are the things that I would fight for, because that is when we are truly free. When we have we know that we can count on a good life and being able to pursue happiness in a true liberty, where we don't have to fear the things that the other side uses to wedge people against us, to turn people against their Americans. It killed me when I saw that the people wearing shirts at a Trump rally that said, I'd rather be Russian than a Democrat, or anything of that nature where they are really against the things that we stand for, and it's because of how ignorant they are about the things that we fight for. And it's our jobs to educate them in as good a way as we can, because we have to reach those people. We have to turn them and help them to see that we can deliver a better America for them, not just for us, but even for them, if they give us a chance and listen to the words that we're saying and understand that the programs that we fight for are the things that benefit them and their families. These are the things that we have to fight for, and we do it better together. We as a nation are stronger together. And that's the thing that I fight for. And that's why I really appreciate the people who work with me and the people that are trying to spread the message, because they get it. They get that together our voice is louder. Our voice is more powerful. When Democratic parties in these rural districts or rural counties can go out and do great services to their community, and the community can't turn a blind eye to that anymore and say, oh, they're just trying to get votes, or whatever they want to attribute us, or whatever they think that we're about. We have to just be in their face and doing the right things. And that will help people see that we are the party of the future, the party that fights for them, not for some corporate greed bottom line. All right, I'm checking in again. Sorry, I get a little passionate about that. Excellent. Yes, thank you. One of my supporters shared on there. You can volunteer. There's a link right online. It's DWB for Congress /volunteer. You can volunteer online, send in that form, and we will get back to you very soon. We are gearing up now. Obviously, during the current crisis, it's kind of hard to do some of the traditional things that we do as a campaign. As I said, our focus, what we're shifting to, is to make sure that we check in with the most vulnerable people in our district, and that we help them through this crisis and make sure they have the services they have. And I think that that is a voter outreach that will benefit us in the recognition that we're there for more than just getting their vote, that we're there for more than some personal gain, that we're there for them. I think that has a big impact, and altruistically, it's the right thing to do. So that's what we're gearing up to do. So we certainly can use help for that. Of course, and I would get beat up by some of my supporters if I don't mention your support financially makes a big difference. We are a grassroots organization, and we watch our money. We don't waste money. I was told by some supporters after making a comment in a recent town hall event I did, an in-person one, was I was telling people the story about our signs. We had over 1,000 or more signs left over from the last election. Well, unfortunately, because of the district change, the old sign said North Carolina's 10th congressional district, and we had to change those signs. So instead of throwing all those out, we did some research, and we paid money for some vinyl stickers to put over the 10 and make it a 5. And by spending, I think we spent around $400 for that, we were able to save what would have been a $2,300 expense to get all new signs. Those are the things that I do. And that's the mentality I would have going to Washington to serve you, that when we talk about taxpayer dollars, I know it's easy to talk about some of these big programs, talking about rural broadband and that expenditure. I would make sure to do the work and the homework to understand what the anticipated return on investment would be on those programs, and make sure that we figure out ways to maximize that return on investment. We can do government in that kind of business context, as long as we also make sure that it may not be huge margins on that return on investment, but as long as we're at the very least breaking even, if we're benefiting those districts, those counties, those towns, then it's worth it. Those are the things that we will fight for. So I just want to make sure that you understand, if you do contribute, and it does go far. It does make a big impact. But I also know that with the crisis that we're going through, people are concerned. Um, I definitely would say, if you are at least, or in the least bit, economically fragile, and that's I guess the best term I can think of it at right now, then take care of yourself and your families. That's got to come first. But if you can contribute a little bit, if you want to make it a recurring small amount, I often joke with people about, a $10 a month, or even a $30 a month recurring payment makes a big difference, because if we know of a recurring amount that's coming in month after month, we can kind of plan on things based around that, say like a campaign headquarters, or what we need to do. Those things make a big impact. But again, we know that we're not going through normal times. We know that this crisis could go on longer than I think we're being told. We have to protect and take care of our family. So if you have time because you're sitting at home, let's volunteer that time. Your time is way more valuable than money anyway, because if I have an army of hundreds or thousands of constituents in this district who care enough about their future to spend time reaching out to others, especially if they're your neighbors, especially if they're people that you can have a common interest with because of your where you live, that makes a big impact. So your time and effort is actually worth way more than your money. People on my campaign may yell at me for saying that, but it's important for you to know that's how I feel. If I have your time, and you can contribute to the campaign and reaching voters and helping spread that word, then that makes a big impact on this campaign, and we can be successful. So consider that. As I said, the form is online. It's online as how to volunteer on the website, but it's also, you can go directly to dwb4congress.com/volunteer, and you can fill out that form, and we'll get that information. For those who are online, and many of you, I recognize your names. I recognize your contributions already. I really, really genuinely appreciate this. This is a mission for us. This is a mission for a better road forward for our district, and together we can do this. And I really look forward to spending time with you as we do this, and also in having the ability to serve you if I am fortunate enough to get elected. So I'm checking in on the comments here. When I'm elected, will there be a push for corporations to pay their fair share of taxes? Absolutely. That is one of the most important things about one of the things that I will fight for. I honestly believe that an unfair burden of taxes is on the middle class because corporations don't pay their fair share. You think about it, the amount of money that these large corporations pay for accountants and lawyers to basically dodge as much of their tax burden as possible through tax shelters, overseeing money, sending their money overseas, all these types of things to minimize delivering the tax dollars back to the thing, all in the name of, delivering for their shareholders. It's puts a huge burden on our middle class. So we have to make sure they do their fair share. I would be willing to make a huge compromise, and I think there would be other members of Congress who would as well. It's not just me up there, but I would be willing to make a big compromise to lower the base corporate tax rate if we eliminate all the loopholes, all those cutouts, everything possible. If you're making this amount in America, no matter where you're headquartered, that you should pay this amount, period, end of story. Otherwise, you don't get to participate in our consumer economy. That's how it should be. And when we do that, we will have the power to pay down our debts, to pay for these things that will pay back for our society. Those are the things that we will pursue. So I will absolutely do that. She's talking about pure per pupil spending can be increased for our students. Absolutely. If we make sure that corporations are spending their fair share, then that will make a big impact on our education. What is the number one thing that the Republican members of legislatures go for when they're cutting the budgets. It's education, and that has to be the complete opposite. If we're not putting the very best into our educations, then we're going to just get what we pay for. Let's see. Once in office, would love to see bipartisan work done to increase the number of teacher assistants in the school system. Absolutely. I want to work with education leaders from every state, but especially from those within our district, to find out what those needs are and make sure that we figure out the right budget and the right things at the federal level to benefit the states. Now, the problem with education systems being run by the states currently is when the federal government often gets involved through grants or what have you, then the states see that as an out to continuing maintaining what they do. Any funds from the federal government are often offset and taken out of the education system when they cut their budgets and they cut their corporate tax base values in the states. That's what's happened in North Carolina. They keep slashing the corporate base rate, and in doing so, the obvious big expenditure in our state is the education system, and that's what they keep going after. We can't allow that, and as a federal government, we have to figure out a way to, if we're going to leave the education system in the hands of the states, then we have to make sure we mandate certain things are done so that when we do grant federal dollars for different programs, when we do potentially pursue my plan of making the public educators tax exempt positions, that there's not an offset on the states to, oh, well, you're not having to pay them, then you don't need to get paid as much. We need to protect and make sure that that doesn't happen. So those are things I would definitely fight for. I think I answered your question there, but yes, teachers' assistants. That's we absolutely have to make sure that we have the right staffing for the schools, and whether that's teaching assistants, whether we help reduce the number of per students on the teachers, whatever we need to do to make them more efficient, to make them be able to deliver better for their students. I know teachers are passionate about what they do. At this stage, by the way that unfortunately they're paid right now, they have to love what they do. I want to love them back. I want to make sure that we as a federal government, as a nation, recognize the impact that teachers have on our society and deliver for them. And that's why I want to make sure that we do what we need to do and do it from a ground up. When our education system is stronger, or the programs are better when they're ground up programs, not top down programs. We need to listen to our teachers. We need to work with them and the administrators to deliver what they need to do to deliver for their students. And those are the things I will be passionately fighting for. President has talked about cutting Social Security. Yeah, he goes back and forth on that. In certain tweets, he says, "Oh no, I've never said I will cut Social Security," but then he'll literally be on camera the week before where he talks about, "Oh yeah, we're going to have to look at cutting entitlements," and whether he doesn't understand that the entitlements that he says is Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. I don't know if he's that oblivious or if he's just that insincere. We have to protect. We have to grow those programs, not bring them, let them die or cut them. This is when we go back to FDR's Bill of Rights, one of the things he talked about was protection for old age. That's retirement. That's why we got Social Security in the first place. Is that was a piece of his plan in the Bill of Rights that was enacted. We need to protect that. Those are things that you are paying into on a paycheck by paycheck basis. We need to protect it. We need to make sure that we never look at cutting that program because it's what so many people in our nation have come to plan on for their retirement. And when we as a nation demand so much productivity of its workers, we have to make sure to protect those workers when it's time for them to retire. So I will definitely stand by that. We're coming up. We've probably got about 9 more minutes from when we planned. I want to make sure as many people who have questions get those questions answered. We may be kind of winding that up. But I wanted very clearly for everyone to understand I'm someone who is planning to do this frequently when in office. And I'm going to demonstrate that to you by this is our first week. We're going to continue this for at least 4 more weeks. I want people to feel like they have a plug into this campaign, and I'll make sure to talk about some of the same things next time, but I also want to make sure to talk about new things, update you on what I'm hearing about the virus outbreak, update you on things that I think are important for you to understand. I hope you're following me on Facebook. I hope you're following me on Twitter. My campaign accounts for on Instagram, they're all DWB number 4 Congress or not .com DWB 4 Congress for Facebook, for Twitter, for Instagram. They're all the same. I did that to be consistent and to be easy for you to remember. My website is dwbforcongress.com. These are information areas for you. We're going to have some emails coming out soon. We have tried not to bombard people with emails too early in the cycle, but we definitely need to spread the word, so you should be seeing some emails. Hopefully we do them at the appropriate amount of frequency. We don't want to overdo it. We want to make sure you know what's going on in the campaign. And certainly if you want to opt out of getting emails, please do, but make sure that you do stay in touch in some way. We want you to know what it is that we're fighting for, and what progress we see, and where we'll be. We share our events online. You can go online. You can see our events and appearances that are planned. There's a calendar for that. Now some of that may need to be updated because of the situation we're going in. I think there have been some events that we're committed to that are no longer in existence. I need to clean up that calendar. But we definitely are as transparent as possible to let you know where to find us, how to reach us. We want to be interactive and be available to serve you. See, are there any other questions? Looks like that's the end of our questions. I really appreciate you taking the time to be with me online. As I said, I would like to investigate some more technology options to maybe have this be even more interactive in the future, maybe asking, opening up and having people ask questions live if you want to. But I want people to understand that this is important to me, that to have, even in this time of crisis where we can't go county by county, that I want to be available for you. I want to share my vision for this campaign with you, and I want to hear back from you. I want to make sure that you have an opportunity to get your questions answered and to erase any doubts that you have that I'm the person who will fight for you, and also for me to potentially have the opportunity to win you over to help our campaign out, because we're going to be more successful with you involved. No question about that. I hope to see some of you next week. If you feel like you've gotten enough and have other things to do on your Thursday nights, drop by in a couple of weeks. But spread the word. If this has been useful to you, if you feel like you've gotten something out of this, if it's made an impact, let's make sure that people know about that. I don't know for sure if this is going to end up being something that'll be available for people to follow up for, but I believe it is. And point them to it if it is, and they'll be able to watch that. Checking out, there is a new comment that came in. You're welcome. You're welcome. I really, really appreciate your time again, and I hope you have a great evening. Please take care of yourselves. Please take care of your friends and family. This is a time when we as Americans can truly shine because we take care of each other. That is what we should be known for. Let's do this, and let's get through this together, and thank you for your support.